Danger lurks behind this beauty. This is a land of extremes. Rivers can explode, driven by rainfall of 40 inches a week. Only the Sahara has a larger expanse of shifting sands. Mountains and deserts make 90% of the landmass useless for growing food. 1,300 million people have to be fed off an area of land comparable with just 2 Californias.
We feed 1/5 of the Earth's population using only 7% of the world's arable land. We're feeling the pressure.
Professor Zhou Yuanning is a top agricultural scientist, deeply concerned about how his country will feed itself. 640 cities are now spreading over the precious arable land. This bride is permitted only 1 child, but in a few decades, the population will still reach 1,600 million. Failure to feed those millions could trigger a global crisis. And this is a land with a history of rapid lurches, from feast to famine. China can rapidly boost food output. How else can the population growth of the last 50 years be explained, as it jumped from 500 to 1,300 million?
经过苦战一冬、大干一春，在我国广大土地上，出现了古今中外人们想也不敢想、想也想不到的大丰收。
But newsreels do not tell the whole story. Historical records reveal 1,200 famines. When farming was thrown into chaos by Mao's romantic dream, 30 million starved to death during his great leap forward.
Things were done collectively in people's communes. A lot of food was wasted in the fields. Some fields were deserted. All these mistakes stopped the farmers getting in the harvests. Then the famine came.
Sometimes hunger is man-made. Sometimes nature is the cause. Down the centuries, a fear of famine ran deep.
My parents were farmers. When I was young, my home area was hit by natural disasters. My mother and I left the land and we became beggars.
People also fear chaos. A deep sense of history reminds them that this rapidly brings hunger. Travel anywhere in China, and you hear personal memories, especially amongst the 850 million who live in the countryside. Dai Jinxiang farms in North China's Shaanxi province.
I attended school in the cave dwelling over there. These ones as well. I attended school in both. They're both very old caves.
I came here because I suffered from hunger. In my hometown, we could not even afford steamed bread or corn or sorghum. I almost starved to death. We didn't have any rain for a year. It was disastrous.
When I was a child, there was no meat, no rice. We never even thought of them. We just managed to survive on maize and sweet potatoes.
Zhouwangang farms in the southwest of China, in Sichuan province. Now food is sufficient, but how will farm output be boosted to feed a soaring population? The answer is water. To manage the country, we must first control the waters, is an ancient Chinese saying. Water control and farming are inseparable. Professors Gu Jiaoqi and Shan Zheliang have been building dams and canals across China for 50 years. Water is so important in China that famous water engineers of the past are worshipped. Li Bing created one of the wonders of ancient China, the capital river dike, Dujiangyan.
Over here, you get the best view of Dujiangyan. From here, it's easy to see the water coming from the Min River and dividing into the canal down there.
In 276 BC, here in the southwest, in Sichuan province, provincial governor Li Bing started to divert the Min River. He dug a canal hugging this mountainside. He used fire and cold water to shatter the rock. He had to cut through this hill to reach the present city at Dujiangyan. In the city, the water divides and many canals fan out. The dry but fertile plain of Chengdu in Sichuan province needed water. Li Bing's scheme still operates as he designed it, irrigating over 1.5 million acres. What excites Professors Gu and Chen is the science in the design. As water engineers, they know why it still works so well.
This ancient design matches modern scientific thinking.
Li Bing grasped how silt and clean water separate at bends in rivers. Put the diversion in the right place, and silt never blocks the canal. And the weirs he built ensure an even flow all year round. "2,000 years ago, when Dujiangyan was built, 50 million people lived in China. Across the country, there are many ancient water schemes constructed to increase farm output. Li Bing was thoughtful enough to leave behind a design and maintenance manual for his scheme.
The words are Fengzheng Chouxing. He is advising that on straight stretches of the river, the center of the channel must be dug deep. This matches the modern theory of soil mechanics.
In the winter, the whole canal network stretching out from Dujiangyan is shut down for 50 days maintenance. Zhou Wengang is now one of thousands of farmers who do the work.
Every year for the past 10 years, I've been coming here to dig this canal. We have to keep up the maintenance of the canal so there'll never be any shortage of water.
Farmers first dug this canal over 2,000 years ago. Ancient records show that over 1 million people could be engaged on a single project. Canals for irrigation and transport have spanned China for centuries. In its 2,000-year history, the volume of water from Dujiangyan has not changed. Much less water is needed to produce hugely increased crop yields. Immense water savings come from lining the earth canals with concrete slabs or stone. The water saving means viaducts and canals reach further and further into the dry Sichuan plain. The area now irrigated is almost 4 times what it was in 1949. With water, 2 crops a year easily spring from the fertile land. Zhou has lived on this farm all his life. He has 2 sons and a daughter. They were born before the introduction of the one-child policy.
In our area, 9 out of 10 years, there was always a drought. Life was very difficult. Without water, how can rice grow? Crops are like fish. They cannot live without water. Our crops just died.
Zhou is determined his grandchildren will never starve like he did.
When we work on the canals, we get an allowance from the government. It's not very much. But this does not bother us, as we are labouring to ensure there is water, and so make a better future for our children.
Zhou helped build these canals, which ended the problem of drought.
I was only a teenager. I just graduated from elementary school. I first worked on the canals near our town. Later, I went to build new canals linking Dujiangyan with 3 nearby counties.
Water now flows to this farm over 250 miles from Li Bing's intake at Dujiangyan.
Before the completion of the canals, we had to carry water. This was extremely hard work. It was too hard for women.
Sometimes devices called pallet pumps were used. These could lift water a height of 15 feet. They were invented in China 1900 years ago.
We no longer need to carry water to the fields. When we need water, we just let the water flow. It's as easy as that. When the canals were completed, we no longer needed men to help us do the farm work. Women can now manage the farms on their own.
The fishing is left to the men when they're at home.
With the irrigation system in place, a lot of manpower can be saved. You'll not see many men in the villages around here. Most of them have gone to work in the cities. Women take care of everything on the farms. We do things like building reservoirs, power stations, canals and bridges.
Tso's life shows how food output can switch rapidly from famine to feast. But it all depends on very careful water control. Without that, famine and disaster make a rapid return. "600 miles away, water is threatening to get out of control. Flooding has always been a major threat to human lives and farming in China. If these dikes break, 7 million people in the city of Wuhan will be under as much as 15 feet of water.
The current situation is that rain is forecast for Sichuan and South Shanxi today and tomorrow. If the predictions of rainfall reaching 16 inches are correct, then this means we'll face a real battle.
The Yangtze River runs through the vast industrial city of Wuhan. Governor Wang Shangtie is heading for the worst crisis in his life.
Here is the news summary. The Provincial Flood Control Center held an emergency meeting today and issued a warning. The second peak of the Yangtze flood will reach Wuhan within 24 hours.
The Yangtze River dominates southern China as it flows the 800 miles across its floodplain to the sea at Shanghai. "1,200 stations measure levels that can rise many feet in just 1 hour. Governor Wang makes decisions that affect the lives of 400 million people living along the banks of the Yangtze River.
Because of floodwater coming from several sources, the water levels here on the Yangtze will rise. The situation is very alarming.
Under the orders of the Central Military Committee, the armed forces, including the Army, Navy, Air Force and the police, are moving urgently to protect the dikes.
Over 18,000 miles of dikes are manned every 300 feet, 24 hours a day.
We must be on full alert. The real danger is not caused by this part of the river, but by the water from the Han River. So you must watch out for any change in the water level. If we fail to protect this place, then all our previous achievements will be in vain.
It has now rained non-stop for 40 hours. The Weather Bureau reports that Wuhan has had 1/3 of its average annual rainfall in just 2 days. We now have the worst flooding on the Yangtze since 1954.
In the flood control center, the governor hears the latest reports.
In summary, the flood control situation on the middle reaches of the Yangtze will be very, very serious. From the beginning of July until now, the upper reaches of the Yangtze have had continuous rain.
As usual, the armed forces are in the front line fighting the floods. In this year's battle, many officers and men are risking their lives.
We are well prepared for the Battle of the Floods. We have 300,000 soldiers permanently guarding the dikes, with 30,000 in reserve.
At 1100 hours on the 19th of July, the water level at Jianli will reach 120 feet. That is 9 inches over the emergency level.
If this does happen, then there'll be an intense battle for us to fight.
In the eastern part of Junjiang Dike, evacuation is now underway. Flood diversions are being prepared.
Diversion means flooding many areas designed as basins to hold the excess floodwater. The level of the Yangtze has to be lowered to save cities like Wuhan. It is a horrible decision to have to take. Hundreds of thousands of farms inside the flood diversion basins will be sacrificed to save millions in the cities. Alongside the Yangtze River, in many flood diversion basins, the life's work of millions of farmers has been drowned. This one, near Jianli, covers 130 square miles. 20,000 homes are destroyed. 110,000 people have fled. In 1998, the cost of flood damage across China was 4,150 deaths and damage of $31 billion. People were never meant to live in these flood diversion basins. Many of them were built over 1,000 years ago. But more than doubling the population of China in 50 years, left no choice. Ouyang Shuiwen is one of those whose dreams have been shattered. His father built this house. Ouyang has lost everything.
The flooding was an order from the top. We had to accept it. It meant that the city of Wuhan was saved, but we got flooded. At first, we were very unhappy about the decision to flood our homes, but then the officials came and explained the situation to us. They persuaded and convinced us, but all of us cried. I'd invested over $3,000 into 16 acres that I'd planted with rice. All this investment has been wiped out by the flood. Our house is collapsing, and all our furniture is underwater.
Many have built temporary camps on top of the dikes. Ouyang, with his wife and 2 children, have been living like this for over a month.
We live on government handouts. There's nothing to do but just watch the flood water or stay in this tent. I didn't fix this tent up very well. It leaks when it's wet and windy. There's nothing I can do about it. My children have fun playing in the water, but one day they cut their feet. I didn't know what to do. Fortunately, the medical team was here.
Up till now, we have been spared from any serious diseases that could cause an epidemic. Most of the cases here are just colds, sore throats, and stomach upsets.
The Yangtze and the Yellow rivers dominate Chinese farming. The water is crucial for the feeding of 1,300 million people. Even the most ancient records show how worried people are about how heavily and where it rains. Much of China has to get by on just 3 months of torrential summer rain. The Yellow River is called China's sorrow. It is the most dangerous, as it is unpredictable. Historical records show the Yellow River has changed its course 20 times. The last time was in 1947. 900,000 died. Those that survive know they have to quickly rebuild their lives and grow food. Within days, school starts in a tent. These children are schooled to act as one. They learn the need for communal action to fight the floods and so prevent famine that has struck so many times in China's history.
If I get a government loan, I will definitely keep on farming like before. If not, I will try and borrow from family or friends. We simply cannot give up farming, as we'd lose even more by having no food or the means to pay back the loans.
There is a different battle in North China.
Our explosive population growth means people have been chopping down trees indiscriminately.
Shaanxi Provincial Governor Wang Wenshui and Professor Zhou are fighting the destruction of forests. Like battling floods, this is an ancient war. 500 years ago, a Ming scholar wrote, "Wood was cut from the southern mountains. The result was that if the heavens sent down rain, there is nothing to obstruct the flow of water."
In ancient times, Shaanxi province was a beautiful place, with a lot of trees and clear rivers. Later, in the Ming dynasty, with the population growth, more and more land was cultivated, and more forests disappeared. The loss of forests brings serious soil erosion. There is no future that way.
Every year, billions of tons of earth are washed away by the torrential summer rains. Land without trees cannot retain moisture and turns to desert. But some, like Professor Zhou, are fighting back with tree planting.
The hills all around us have been flattened by mechanical diggers to create terraces. Trees will soon grow on the hilltops.
In Xixian County, in Shaanxi Province, Dai Jinxiang is no longer hungry. But as his village celebrates Chinese New Year, drought haunts their lives. So the battle in half of China is not too much water, but too little. The doubling of population in 50 years only fuels the crisis. Dai is helped with the farming by his family. As they had a girl first, they were permitted a second child. The lack of water they face is typical in North China. Water has to be carried to homes from the only well in the village. Shortage of water is at crisis level. Per head, Chinese get by on a quarter of what Americans have.
For 5 months, we had no rain. Now we need to hire pumps for irrigation. It costs over $1 an hour.
That may not sound a lot. Although they grow much of their own food, the family income is still under $1,000 a year, and Dai has no savings. This is typical for farming families in China. So, with the water shortage, how can these farmers help grow yet more food? The first step is motivation. Political disruption in the Mao years destroyed motivation and the careful water control needed for intensive farming. After Mao's death came the reforms and open-door policies. In the cities, the impact is obvious. But changes in the countryside have been just as dramatic. Market policies swept away Mao's planning dictatorship and motivated farmers. Like millions of others, Dai signed a contract for land, which gives him rights to farm as he wishes for 30 years.
Now we farmers are able to lease our land with contracts. It gives us an opportunity to make long-term plans. We can improve our farms.
Motivation is being harnessed to science in the battle to boost food output and beat drought. But solutions must be simple and low cost. In this pilot plant in Taiyuan, the capital of Shaanxi province, Professor Zhou thinks his scientists have come up with a winner.
You make the additive?
Yes, we make it. We also have the patent for it. It costs about the same as ordinary plastic, but the output of cotton is increased by 330 pounds per acre, and the yield for maize is increased by 30%. Osmotic plastic has tiny holes, so when it rains, the water is able to pass through the plastic. But when the sun comes out, the heat expands the plastic and blocks the holes. So this seals the moisture in the earth. The plastic boosts Dai's maize yields. In China, science is the great hope to meet the growing food demands.
In the past, the maize cobs were not used, but now we use them as culture for mushrooms. They're ground to a powder and mixed with wheat chaff.
As the head of a leading agricultural research institute, Professor Zhou is brimming with ideas.
In this way, over 1 million tons of waste cobs can be used. After sterilization, we put in the spores and grow the mushrooms. After all this preparation, we can make $3 for every $1 of costs. You know, we get a pound of mushrooms from every pound of ingredients.
This is sustainable agriculture at its best. Nothing is wasted.
Innovation in China is nothing new. Professor Zhou keeps this machine to demonstrate ancient technology. It was invented in China in the 2nd century BC. Seeds slide down 3 tubes into 3 even rows. This permits weeding and gives huge productivity gains. Until 150 years ago, Europeans wastefully scattered seeds by hand. Half the seeds did not germinate, and weeds choked crops. Professor Zhou can show many other inventions and innovations that fed the expanding population in the past. But it is the future that really concerns him.
These seedlings are going to be used for genetic modification of cotton crops. These are the newly bred cotton seedlings.
In order to achieve high yields and good quality crops, seeds play an extremely important role. With the right seeds, we can save on both pesticides and water.
Many laboratories focus on seeds. In the last 50 years, coupled with the use of artificial fertilizers, yields have more than doubled in the key crops of rice, wheat, maize, cotton, and soya. By 2015, predictions say 40% of seeds will be genetically modified. Science is a powerful weapon, but it may not be enough. Demand for food is bound to race ahead of population growth as people want a better diet. 20 years ago, practically no one ate meat. Prosperity has radically changed that. So now, a vast amount of grain feeds livestock to satisfy increasing demand for meat. There are fears that China will become a huge grain importer, sending world prices sky high. But there is a glimmer of hope in one of Professor Zhou's experiments.
Yeah, it smells good. Must be very tasty.
Professor Zhou thinks there is a way to feed cattle without grain.
The governor works, so we must work. In this case, you don't need any grain to feed the cattle, do you?
Microorganisms have been used to break down waste maize stalks. Mixed with wheat chaff and mineral additives, Professor Zhou claims it creates more than enough protein to feed cattle. It is sustainable. The farmer gets free maize stalks in exchange for the manure from the cattle. In the south, with a mixture of dogged determination and innovation, Ouyang is rebuilding his life. Nine months after the floods, friends and family have rallied to help. His home is almost rebuilt.
Last year when the flood came, all the houses were destroyed. I saw them collapsing and it broke my heart. All the houses were flooded and they all collapsed. When the water levels dropped, I came back to the village and everything was in ruins. Later, my friends and family came to my rescue. We recovered the bricks that could be used and found some builders to help me.
When there is stability and no floods, this land has always been exceptionally fertile. Food yields have always been huge. In Europe, until reforms 200 years ago, farmers had to hold back nearly a quarter of their wheat crop for seed. For over 2,000 years in rice-growing China, only a tiny percentage has been needed. This is one reason why China can move so fast from famine to feast, and so trigger rapid population growth.
Throwing the rice seedlings is a new planting method we are using. It gives us a better yield and saves a lot of work.
Rice planting used to involve many people in days of back-breaking labor.
The yield used to be about 3,300 pounds per acre. Now, it's double that amount.
Ouyang will try anything if it saves time and makes money. But like millions of farmers, he struggles to make a living growing basic crops like rice. So, Ouyang looks for other ways to make money.
If I stick to just farming, my life will never get better. I just cannot make any money from planting rice.
The problem is fixed government prices for grains such as rice and maize. So, Ouyang has borrowed money to build a pit for snakes he will breed and sell.
We can't depend on government handouts. We know we have to make a living with our own efforts.
But what if all farmers followed Ouyang?
People now have different ways of making a living. We are free to do whatever we like. Some still farm, but others go to the cities and become carpenters and builders. Some even start their own businesses.
The frustration of farmers is serious, but in the drive to grow food, the main battlefront is water. Miyun Reservoir was built in 1 year in 1958. It's part of a nationwide program that has expanded irrigated areas by over 250% in 50 years. Close by Beijing, this is the largest reservoir in North China. The dam and waterworks were designed by Professors Gu and Shen.
Many people were involved in the project. Over 200,000 farmers, over 10,000 soldiers, 700 barbers, 3,000 seamstresses, and 10,000 cooks. It was very exciting.
The professors have lost count of the water projects they've built, but clearly far from enough.
In North China, we just don't have enough water. Even if we economize, that won't solve the problem.
Throughout North China, the challenges mount. Water levels keep falling. Across China, forest cover has been reduced to under 14%. Ancient rivers are drying up. Logging bans made in 1998 may have come too late. Spurred on by overgrazing, deserts advance almost 800 square miles, about the size of Rhode Island, every year. Millions have left the land to work in new industries. More industry demands more water. Urban growth eats into the best farming land. But this man thinks he has the strategy to win China's water wars.
The quality of the project and the safety of the workers are of equal importance. Don't think that it's just enough to be wearing a safety helmet.
Li Anqian has great responsibilities. He masterminds the development of the Yangtze River from Tibet to the sea at Shanghai.
Today the rain is light. Here, when it's heavy, you can't see your fingers in the rain. So the problem is very much one of having too much water or too little.
This earth dike at Jinzhou in Hubei province is 1,000 years old. Sustained floods make it soft like a sponge. A wall of steel is the latest strengthening solution, but there are thousands of miles. The cost will be huge.
This project is an integral part of the Yangtze River Flood Control Program. It will make a great contribution to controlling floods in the future.
Fighting the floods has obsessed China's rulers for centuries. A famous poem by Mao reads, "I dream of a great reservoir in the Three Gorges. and it will amaze the world. Lian Qian is responsible for realizing the dream. The dam will generate electricity and hold back floodwaters of the Yangtze River in the mountains of the Three Gorges before it crosses the flat plains that are so threatened by floods. Lian Qian supervises the design and construction of what is now the largest water engineering project in the world. But the Three Gorges Dam is dwarfed by Lian Qian's plans for beating the water shortage in northern China. He thinks he can divert the excess floodwater of the Yangtze River into the Yellow River.
We can build a canal and direct surplus water from the Yangtze River across to the Yellow River. Then the additional water in the Yellow River can be used to irrigate a huge area.
Water will make the desert bloom. But this is not new. In the far northwest of China, glacier water has been fed by canal to irrigate crops for centuries. What is new is the scale. 115,000 square miles can be irrigated. That is the size of Arizona.
We have the capability and the technology. It's predicted that the population of China will reach 1,600 million. We are sure that this area will be sufficient for feeding our future generations.
But such giant schemes are costly and controversial. The environmental impact is uncertain. Some feel much could still be done to reduce the demand for water and perhaps avoid the need for such vast projects.
We have a saying, water the fields. What I urge is water the plants. We cannot afford to flood whole fields.
70% less water is used on these fruit trees in Shaanxi province. But saving water like this is rare, even though it is easy and cheap.
Chinese agriculture is now at a crossroads. We are facing two choices. One is blind development that destroys the environment. The other is sustainable agriculture.
Voices calling for more sustainable development are getting louder, but the giant water schemes seem unstoppable. When the reservoir created by the Three Gorges Dam fills, over 1 million people will have had to leave their homes.
The purpose of the Three Gorges Dam has been misinterpreted as a project to generate more electricity with deliberate mass migration. But the bottom line of this project is to ensure the safety of people living along the Yangtze River. 20 million people will directly benefit, with another 90 million along the middle and lower reaches of the Yangtze who will also benefit.
Ouyang is one of those who'll benefit. The snake enterprise did not work out. But friends have lent another $600. Ouyang now owns a bus.
It's more profitable than farming. A farmer plants seeds in the springtime and has to wait till the autumn to be paid for his efforts. But as a bus owner, I make money every day. Well, more or less.
Operating rules are strict. A timetable means he has to set off with or without passengers. But Ouyang has it fixed, even though the competition looks stiff.
9 buses are licensed to operate from here, But we 9 owners pool all the fares, and at the end of the day, we divide up all the money.
Today, China is winning the battle to feed its millions. It succeeds with the same formula of invention and water engineering it has used for over 2,000 years. But what of the future? With a population expansion from 1,300 to 1,600 million expected within 2 decades, China must not fail to feed its people. Stability will be critical. The fallout from failure will be global and catastrophic.